We'll make you a co-host and that way you can screen share.
What am I screen sharing?
Jeff's,
Document.
audit, yeah. Audit.
I believe she has a few, I didn't know over here, she's gonna screen share.
Not she did.
I could do it through Zoom, I think.
Oh, just who we're looking for.
Go ahead, we're confusing. If the computer doesn't work, we turn it off.
We realized there were two different ones that turn off. So you literally have to turn off that little computer in the back as well as cycle through.
No, what I have to do is hold that phone. Put the power stop. And then press it again. But if ever it's not, you bring that. Sometimes you just flash it.
Okay.
And then you just touch it. So if ever it happens again, press the button, hold it for about 3 or 4 seconds. And people completely shut down.
Okay.
Yeah.
Press it again. We're actually gonna-
So what? Oh, I know, isn't it so good?
I have a next time. Can you?
Yeah, it's so good. My kids eat it like every day for lunch.
What is that?
You operate?
Yeah.
Hello.
Oh.
Hey, Rich, how are you?
All the electronic components together. Good. Take a while. I don't even have to get it by what tonight. Probably went hard for us to all learn from Keith how to do it.
I've done it before and it's pretty straightforward, but I heard someone had trouble last week.
So George and Ken don't know how to do it, so.
Okay.
Those all calls and stuff, they can't do it.
Oh, hi.
Thank you, Keith. So you don't want to stay?
I'll go back and finish it.
Thank you. Are we good to go? We're recording? Okay.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Bruce Colgren, Vice Chair. I'm acting as Chair tonight. Christine is away, and so I will call this meeting to order. First order of business is the approval of the draft minutes from March 5th. Does anybody have any
I have no.
edits or
No,
corrections? No.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as written.
Second.
Okay. How do you vote,
Yes.
George?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Minutes are approved. Invitation for a public comment.
Congratulations to.
I don't know why you guys just don't leave it on. Congratulations to Bruce and Russ on elections. This is the guy that ran against you, Jim Medeiros. I just want to introduce him to you guys. He has also sent a letter of interest to be an alternate for the planning board.
Nice to meet you. Okay. Thanks for coming.
Say anything?
Okay, any other public comment? All right, so the voting results from last Tuesday, myself and Russ were both elected, as Ken just alluded to, and our zoning amendments all passed. Okay, so old business, tonight we have with us Jeff Littleton from Moosewood Ecological, and we're ready for your presentation. Yeah.
All right. Presentation, huh?
Yeah.
Right.
It says on the regulatory.
That was the
audit.
first I heard of that, so my presentation is going to be very brief. Well, thanks for having me here. Jeff Littleton, Moosewood Ecological. I'm here to just mainly answer questions regarding the audit that we performed so far. This is in draft version here. I can give you a rundown of what I'd like to do is give you a rundown of the organization of it, and talk about some sections that are in progress at the moment and where we'll be going from here. So I'm really representing our whole team. There's a whole team of us that were putting this together. The primary author, Jamie McWiggum, couldn't be here this evening, so I'll be taking any comments and taking them back to our group as needed. The organization of this is basically, it outlines the purpose and the process of our review of your master plan and regulatory documents. Zoning for site. Well, it breaks down detailed findings, where we break it out, strengths, weaknesses, potential changes, and regional concerns that be applicable to each one of these.
The battery's dying out already. Yeah.
Yep, apparently.
Oh, here.
I got a green light, now a red light. Let's see. And then there's also some links to appropriate maps that were already existing in your previous master plan that we included. There are a couple of sections that are in progress. This has to do with the natural resources, which we're also preparing your natural resources inventory. We prepared a draft last year. We did some, in 2022, we prepared a draft. 2023 last year, we did site assessment. And we'll be incorporating this audit into it as well, because that was one of the recommendations.
Yes, it is. You sound pretty loud.
I have a loud voice. Awesome, thank you. And also the land use section and a variety of other sections that Carol has been working on, that are revised sections. So we do have some questions regarding this, and so we will need to be working with the planning board as well as Carol as we're moving through this. Is how do we treat the chapters that are being revised now? Are we to review the existing chapters, providing recommendations for then Carol's version, or are we going through her draft versions and then providing our recommendations and thoughts moving forward? That part has not been clarified on this process.
Do you want us to answer that?
You can
Yep,
answer
okay.
anything at any point.
I will, from my perspective, I think that we have seen a lot of the draft work that Carol has done already, and it would make sense to be all working on the latest version. So working with Carol on that most recent version would be my recommendation. But I'm not sure what the rest of the board thinks about that. I just would worry if you spend too much time looking at something that's old, that either we're duplicating our efforts or
Yep.
not coming to something that's new. Russ, you've also been on the,
Yeah, I think I agree. Probably the new stuff, because I assume whatever Carol's writing, we're gonna be incorporating anyways. And
Right.
so to review something that's outdated is,
and Carol, are these are chapters that you've already done and you've presented to the steering committee, is that right? Yeah, so we've already read through them
Yeah.
at this point, so I think it would make the most sense to have you working from the most recent version. If
Just to,
the rest of the board agrees.
so just to clarify, we're talking about chapters in the NRI or something?
In the master plan.
Chapters in the master plan, okay.
And Carol, you're working on land use, economic development.
The drafts that are essentially complete, population, housing, and economic environment, those have both been through the steering committee
Right,
and the planning board. And now existing land use subject to the map,
Mhm.
and then when all the other work is done, then the future land use. So there won't really be a lot, I think, for Jeff, because since I followed the format of the previous master plan and basically updated that, I think your findings will probably be the same.
Yeah.
Because the things that weren't addressed before were also not addressed this time because they weren't there.
Okay, that's where the confusion was. So we've actually been reviewing both.
okay,
We were not privy to how far along the drafts are at this
Yeah.
point. We don't know if they're almost final draft and ready to go for it to be published. So that was this is new information to us. So thank you. So we've been reviewing actually both. So,
okay,
and they did look very similar. So I just wanted to make sure that we're capturing all the recommendations that may not be captured in the current draft that
Yeah.
we were looking for in the previous version, just as a sort of a double check kind of thing, not to go
Sure.
against her work at all, Carol's work. She's fabulous. But we're just another set of eyes looking at it
Yeah.
from our perspective, which our charge is to be looking at natural resources and wildlife habitat protection through your town documents.
right,
But I appreciate that. So we will concentrate then on the new drafts that are out now. And
Yeah.
we'll make sure we go back through and take out anything that isn't in the new one. So thank you.
does the rest of the board agree with that?
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Carol, you may have said this, how far along are these drafts at this point? Are they?
The economic development is, I mean, complete as far as it's been to the planning board and we've made all the changes, the population and housing. I have one thing left to do, because we have now finished. The steering committee will see that at their next meeting. What we have not done yet are goals and objectives for either of these, because those really need to wait until we've been through the whole process. So you had noted that in your audit, but you'll see again that those won't be there when you look at these.
Okay.
And I'll send you these two most up to date.
Okay, great. And then once we review that, that'll be a great time for us to sit with you and any representatives from the planning board to discuss these.
Yeah.
At that point.
And I don't think those chapters are ready necessarily to be published. We've seen them all, but we haven't yet to have a working session to
Correct.
go through those in detail.
Okay.
So that, I think they're getting there, but there's probably more reviewing that will be done.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
And we've only been using this in-house as well. We haven't
Right.
shared them.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Carol. Thank you, planning board. So then those sections, we should be able to update very quickly in this draft as well. And so I guess at this point, I would like to open it up to any questions or comments that you may have at this point before we move on to the second part of the night, talking about some mapping that we've been doing.
Sure. I have a question, if we want to dive right in. So on page 4, under, it's talking about the vision statement, which is not something that we haven't revised that at this point. So I think it's actually really helpful to have your strengths, weaknesses, and potential changes. I guess, in the last bullet, it says, continue to use innovative practices to preserve open space while allowing limited growth. I'm just curious, what are some examples of that?
I'm
And
looking
maybe-
at some of those innovative land use protection
Okay.
control methods that was produced by the state is the document that we're referring to there. And I should be more, we can be more explicit as to naming that. We named that document previously. And I think it was the second page under the process of review in the second paragraph, and talking about looking at these types of innovative land use planning techniques. That's the actual title.
Okay. That was just for my own clarification.
I will make sure we clarify that. Thank you for noting that.
Another comment that I had, it on page 6, again, under the weaknesses, we're talking about the economic development chapter.
Okay.
And under the weaknesses, it says, does not provide action items or objectives. Is that, and we don't have that in our current master plan, and I'm not sure if we do, Carol, in our updated version. Do we?
Not yet. I had.
Not yet.
I think the economic chapter has a little bit of that population housing so far. I have no goals or objectives or recommendations.
Okay. And I guess just more of you've obviously looked at probably a lot of master plans, and that is something that other towns have the goals and objectives. I mean, I think that's something we need going forward, but it seems like a theme throughout your recommendations is that we don't have that. Is that something you see other towns doing more specifically?
We do, and Carol can probably address this as well from her perspective.
It varies. Some will have the goals and objectives specific to that topic in each chapter, and other master plans will take all of them and drop them into the future land use plan chapter. So you would find for every topic, you'll find all of the goals and objectives and recommendations in that one place. So that's really up to you how you want to do that.
So that brings me to a really great point, is that's sort of one of the overarching sort of themes of this are those action items, and providing a mechanism that you're able to track your progress on these action items is something that we've noticed an awful lot that can get lost in communities as new members come on board, members come off boards and stuff, is being able to track those action items, saying, yes, we checked them off, or some sort of notation as to what sort of progress has been made, hasn't been made, any notations for those action items that are in your master plan, and making that a trackable item, simple as a spreadsheet.
Okay, and that is not part of the master plan. That's something separate that.
We're suggesting that you should create these trackable action items
As part of the master plan, or.
as part of
separate?
your whole master planning
Okay.
process.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving forward, because because some communities will do it by chapter, some do the whole thing
Yeah.
all together. And it seems like Temple has been doing it by chapter. Okay, so it's all up to each community is very individualistic in this term and in this form, how they prepare their master plan. But it's just a lot of items or reports that have recommendations or next steps or action items. It's always important to provide some sort of mechanism that actually tracks, since again, you have members coming on and off the board. You know,
If
so-
I could just add, part of our scope is an implementation section, and that is where we would do exactly what you're talking about. So all of those recommendations, or objectives, whatever we're going to call them, they're all going to go into this matrix. And there would be a way to identify, its priority, the time frame for when you anticipate who's responsible for doing it, and check whether or not it's happened. So that will be sort of a worksheet for the planning board every year to look at and see what has been accomplished and what hasn't.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of this process, then we'll have that document.
Yes.
Okay.
And one other question, I think I know the answer, but I see the acronym LID. Is that low impact development?
Yeah, we should, we'll
Okay.
make sure we spell those out.
Okay,
for
yeah,
you.
just
I
for the-
noticed that too.
Reader that.
Sometimes those things we just zip right through
Yeah.
because we're so used to it, but we have to remember the audience we're writing for, so.
What does low impact development mean?
It generally relates to a lot of stormwater management.
Ah, okay, all right.
Whether people have questions? I mean, in general, I really like the way that you laid it out with having, kind of concise feedback for each section. It's helpful to read through.
Okay,
I like the format of it.
the format. Okay, thank you. That was definitely one of our top items is the format for you.
Yeah.
On some of these potential, almost every one of these has potential change. And you have some bullet items. And maybe that's in the implementation phase, where these bullet items will turn into something you can actually do.
That would be for the town to move forward on those. Yeah. And, we're trying to keep them, fairly limited.
Right. I'm just wondering if, like, I'm just gonna pick one here. Consider increasing wetland and other sensitive area buffers. So will there be some suggestions that come along with it, like make a 35-foot versus a 50-foot or any of that kind of thing? Or is it just the suggestion that we should
Do
look
that.
at that and come up with our own?
Yes.
Okay.
The latter.
Yeah, okay.
Absolutely. We don't want to tell you 50 feet. We don't want to tell you 100 feet. We could tell you 1,000 feet, but that's not going to fly.
Right, I know.
But we can tell you what that would protect and
Vermin
you know, but
Yeah.
yeah, right. We also kind of look at it as a regional level as well. So Barbara Richter from the New Hampshire Association of Conservation Commissions has a nice spreadsheet that she shared with us. That has all the towns and their setbacks or buffers. There's difference, right? Setbacks and buffers.
Yeah.
And so it's nice to see those across the state and see what's happening regionally as well. And that just comes down to your community, what would seem to fly, because it's all a compromise on either way.
Yeah.
Knowing that setbacks are just a distance from, say, a wetland, since we're on the wetland edge, but that doesn't mean it's going to be a naturally buffered area that would then help with stormwater that's then coming into a particular area and sheet flow running right into the wetland. So
Okay.
there are differences there. And again, we were using existing maps, so some of those are old. Most of that data is still fairly good. What definitely has changed are your conservation land. So if that plays into here anywhere, that will change, but our charge wasn't necessarily to develop maps as part of this, except for one map that we can talk about in a moment when it's appropriate.
Kathy, I think it's fine if you want to ask your questions too, and unless
Yeah.
other folks have things.
Page 7, this is similar to one of Kirby's original ones. Under, construction materials, the possible changes, the second bullet. Address hydrologic connectivity and groundwater protection as opposed to examining groundwater. Locating sand. That seemed really technical. Is this like in that other document that you have referred to that happened in section 2 that the state has, or like, I guess what I'm asking is
Section
something
2.
specific like that, where would we figure out what that means?
Okay. We can elaborate on that then, to
Okay,
give
yeah,
you
I
like examples. So this is one of the things that's helpful, so we can add figures. A simple map showing examples of areas. If that answers your question.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
In general, I was curious as far as the natural resource inventory. I know, you know, we didn't have the budget to be full NRI, so were some of those recommendations in there, the things that had to have been cut out originally from. I mean, I know you and Sean were going back and forth, and Sean was, I assume, working with you all. I wasn't taking minutes at that time. But, you know, figuring out what we were going to be able to budget for.
Mhm.
So are those things that we might do in an additional year? Is that if we wanted, you know, just.
Some of the potential changes in here.
Exactly.
Yeah, so this really examines the previous one. So this is the challenge that we're working with. We're examining a previous one while we're developing the new one, and we're
Mhm.
also criticizing ourselves, but because of so truth be known, but that's what we're up against, and also because of the limited scope of that NRI. Now that we're moving through this process, we're doing a critical review of that and going to try to address these in some form or some way, probably more like recommendations in your NRI for things moving forward. And this document will be reflected in your NRI. And when we met in January, I think it was, we're in March, yeah, and in January, this was one of the pieces I was talking about, that while the NRI is in draft format, this was one of the recommendations. So we scratched that one right off the list. We can add this as an appendix to it, but then provide a brief summary in there. And our critical review of the previous one, our work that we did, will then revolve into some recommendations that address this,
Okay.
if that makes sense. Okay. So yeah, that was another tricky part. It's like self-criticism. It's a good exercise. So I guess in essence, when we revise this section, it's just going to be all strengths, and right?
the natural resource section.
Well, I suppose a possible recommendation.
Future.
would be, yeah.
Yeah.
Dig deeper into this work.
Yeah, absolutely. That'll be the avenue that we'll focus on this.
Anybody else? Right?
Yeah, so I guess, Jeff, what would be the next step or next steps for moving forward for?
Excellent question. So our next steps will then be to get the most up-to-date drafts from Carol. And then we'll rework those sections, working with Carol and maybe Christine or someone from the planning board. We've been working with Christine up at this point to finalize a draft, provide you with another draft for review and any additional comments, and then we'll finalize the project, the document.
Have you set up, do you have a timetable for that to happen, or does that depend on Carol? Is it working with her?
Well, I think she can just easily send us those documents and we'll be working right away. We're gonna jump right on it. Be honest with you, we have field season coming up, so our goal is to have this completed before at least the full bulk of it, which a lot of it has been done, but the review of the newer documents, incorporating that into here, we'll have that completed. And then recommendations, if a month works for you guys, to review the next draft, for any comments, and then we can finalize that. So originally in our contract, I think we had until July to do this, but we're looking to wrap this up much sooner. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So the other piece, if it's appropriate to move forward on the mapping. So we're almost done with this mapping. I sent out a draft of this, and this is what Carol's waiting on for us. So we're really dependent upon each other for multiple pieces of each of our projects here. The process is taking longer than originally anticipated. We were looking originally at the 2017 tax assessors database, and that's how we came up with the basic budget. Originally the project was really just focusing on the audit, but came really clear that you guys needed some form of more updated parcel mapping, and Carol needed the updated land use planning. We decided, okay, we can make a compromise, we can do that. And we originally thought 2,500 was going to cover it. So that was taking away that much from the audit itself to put towards this mapping. We've spent that, but it's still going to take us another $800 to $1,000 to finish it, because now what we're dealing with is the new tax assessors database. We've already done all the bulk of the work, making that database jive with our GIS database. Well, the new tax assessors database is different. They won't communicate as easily now. So we have to do more hand manipulation, if you will. So that part's taking longer. So that's additional funds coming out of what is really originally supposed to go towards this audit. So that's an additional expense that's happening. So
Is Christine aware of that?
I sent her an email
sent her an
on February 15th of
Yep.
this. Yeah. And so I'm just looking for some feedback on that end on how we deal with that, knowing that we were allocating that $7,500 for the audit itself, and that's still needed in order to complete that part of it, and an additional 800,000 to finish the mapping. And this is not survey grade mapping, but I think you guys were aware of the limitations, but it's certainly useful for all your planning here in town, absolutely. So,
I think we probably need to talk to Christine about what's left in the grant for the rest for the HOP grant. I'm not sure if that's where the initial money came from. I think it is.
I think so.
yeah,
So we probably just need to have that conversation with her when she's available.
How soon do you need an answer on that part of it?
as soon as you guys can.
Yeah.
I mean, we're prepared to just move right through and finish that up as well.
Mhm.
So,
We'd probably have an answer without, it wouldn't have to be at the next meeting. 2 weeks from now, we could probably.
come up with something sooner.
Get an answer, Christine will probably have the answer.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fine, yeah.
We're not in a position, the board, Ken, you can answer this. We're not, I mean, the money is gonna have to come from
Somewhere.
the fund, we don't have extra money in our planning board budget for something like this, so it's gonna have to come from we have to,
You can go before the board and ask, and if we can find it, we can do it. I'm certain that we can. It's just a matter of, that's next Tuesday's meeting.
Mhm.
So we should definitely have an answer. If they get back to the board before then, get on the agenda, we'll have an answer for them on that Tuesday night.
Sounds good.
And we should be able to.
Okay.
I'm not sure if Christine has already included some of that in the planning board budget.
I think it could potentially come from the grant that we have, because I believe that's where the other funding came from. So we probably just need, she's been managing the funds for that, so we'll have to check with her to see what's left.
Yeah.
I'm not sure offhand, but I think we should start with that, and then if that doesn't come to fruition, we should come to you as the select board.
well, we should be able to have an answer for you.
Sure.
In the next couple weeks.
Sure, yeah, that sounds great.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
All right, well, thank you very much. Thank you for your
Yeah,
feedback. I
thank
appreciate
you,
it.
Jim,
very
for
much.
everything. Okay, the HOP grant. Who is gonna speak?
I can speak to that. So we are currently doing individual interviews with people in town. So I believe we're completing that by the end of April. So that's kind of our next target date, and I know that we've had quite a few interviews already, so that's good news, and we're happy to take anybody else that wants to sign up for one of those.
I would be.
You would, okay, okay. I'll tell Pam.
Anybody else? I did sign up for that too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Did Pam reach out to you
Um,
or somebody?
actually, Kathy's,
Kathy reached, okay.
I did, yeah. Yeah, I just haven't responded to you yet. Playing hard to get.
I got it, never responded either, so.
Is that just the answer to your interview?
Oh, yeah, that's just a
No
step at a
response.
time. No,
All right,
no, it's just, we just agree on a time.
anything else on the HOP grant?
No.
Tax maps, so Christine will talk to that. Flood maps, so we'll have to wait on that too, and were we gonna talk about subdivision regulations, or do we want to wait for Christine?
I think, last meeting, all we had to do is I sent her the latest revisions from what we all talked about. And then she was gonna send it on for legal review, so I think that's where it is right now,
For you to review,
the legal review.
legal review?
Yeah, and so I guess we wait for them to come back with something and
Okay,
Like,
Thank you, Carol.
Thanks.
Okay. So the election of officers, I would like to make a motion to wait. Obviously, because Christine is not here before we do that.
That seems prudent.
Or we could just all vote for Christine.
Yeah, we could, it's an opportunity to all vote Christine
Next year again.
as chair, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Share 'em. Yeah, please.
All right, so, she had already shared that she doesn't want to be chair. She is happy to be vice chair or secretary or nothing. She is happy to support the new chair. She would like someone else to do the next meeting's agenda because she's going to do that. Later. And she's happy to have you all decide the elections tonight, just given her.
Well, I personally don't feel that I have the time to be a chair because of all the other boards that I'm on, and I don't think I would do it justice. I don't think that would be fair. It certainly wouldn't be as thorough as what Christine does, for sure. But I would want to talk to Christine about exactly what her role would be as vice chair, doing a lot of the legwork and the heavy lifting. So I'm not going to rule it out, but if somebody else wanted to be chair, I certainly would, I would endorse. Murray, if you wanted to do it, or you can't because you're
Yeah,
but I would,
Yeah.
Murray, if you want to be chair.
no, unfortunately, I can't.
Yeah.
I just can't keep up with it.
Yeah.
As evidence, it took me nearly 9 months to get this driveway regulation back out to you.
No, I get it. I get it.
How about that?
I do not have the bandwidth to be chair at this time, and nor do I feel like I have enough experience on this board as well. As one of the newer members. But I think it's also important, Christine has done a lot behind the scenes, and I'm not sure that, I mean, she had given us this responsibilities document, and I don't think it all has to be on one person either, so I think we can also, like, Bruce, if you were to do it, we can support you in other ways so that it's not a commitment that is too much.
Yeah, she took the chair to a new level. That's the
Right,
amount of
and
time and energy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And no one's ever done that.
Right,
and
right.
So it's really tough. You know, it's like trying to follow Tom Brady, you know, it's
Yeah.
crazy.
right, no, I understand that.
Well,
What about,
I guess, I mean, I would,
what about Russ? Are you interested?
I'm kind of in the same boat as you. I mean, well, tonight's my first official night being on the planning board.
Yeah, well, but you've kind of been on longer than I have. in some
But
respects.
also there's a lot of nights that we have planning board here that I'm presenting to another planning
Yeah.
board in another town. So I'd be always missing things and you know.
Yeah,
Why don't we defer that then the next 2 weeks?
I think we can certainly do that, and, you know, just myself or somebody, we need to just come up with an agenda. If Christine doesn't want to, you know, we can make that happen somehow, between all of us.
I mean, certainly, I think her suggestion of, hey, we could divide and conquer on some of these things. It may be, you know, keeping up with what Christine did may be something that none of us can do, but.
yeah, I'm not
Yeah,
sure we're all,
one or two-
any of us
one or
are gonna
two-
do justice to
between
that.
each, You know, as long as it's getting done and.
Yeah, I like the divide and conquer
Yeah.
idea. If everyone had a task,
Yeah.
that's just like, that's your one job to do,
Yep.
to make sure for the next meeting.
Do the agenda if you all will be responsible for saying what you want.
That would be great for this upcoming, for the next meeting. Yeah, yeah. You guys are all okay with that?
Mhm.
Yep,
That sounds good.
thank you.
Good. Okay, and so the next item, I guess that we basically talked about responsibilities.
Mhm.
Next new business would be, work session would be driveway regulations.
You want to dive into that now?
I guess we have, we don't really have anything else to go over
Business,
tonight. That's,
unless there's updates on the notes, which.
and I don't have any.
Yeah.
I think they
You-
postponed their meeting
Yeah.
that they most recently had, so I don't believe that they had it. Unless anybody else.
All right. All right, so there were two documents distributed and also posted. One of them is just a copy of what's on the town website today for the current driveway regulations as approved in 2022. So just if anybody had a question and wanted to reference back and say, hey, does it really say that? That's what is in, that's what the board in February of 2022 approved. What we've done over the past 2 years is after this was adopted, it was sent out to Southwestern Regional Planning Commission for a legal review. And their comments, which came back in September of 2022, are in this document in red. After that, we went through some discussions on are there other things that we would want to incorporate it, and those suggestions are in blue. And we now have additional proposed changes on page 16 of the Moosewood report of his recommendations for changes, which are not in here at all, because they showed up in the same table tonight. And not that we have to look at all this stuff. So what I recommend we do is go through the document, looking at the stuff in red, and say, do we want to incorporate those legal recommendations from legal review from Southwest, and then go back and look at the stuff in blue, just because they all appeared in two different time frames, if that makes sense to folks.
Okay.
So up on no changes, no recommended changes table of contents yet. That hasn't been reformatted, should it have to be. In the top of section 3, it talks about in red, what Southwest recommended is adding of the sentence, permits are required for the first 30 feet of a driveway relative to the right of way. And I think what and then they deleted the 30 feet of the right of way in the next paragraph. I think they're just trying to bring that right up to the top and say, hey, if you're going to, and then I added in blue some suggested clarification, but basically the permit in the next paragraph is for the construction of a new driveway, the alteration, the repair, the repaving, or relocation. And permits are required within the first 30 feet of a driveway relative to the right of way. So that was their recommendation, is to make sure that it's clear that most of our regulations only apply to the first 30 feet. They changed in the paragraph below that the driveway location as indicated on an approved subdivision plat or an approved septic plan is the only driveway to be utilized unless a change is authorized in writing by, and it used to say the planning board, and they recommended making it the road agent.
Hey, Murray, do you want to talk about things as we go?
Sure,
or
yeah, let's,
Come
yeah,
back to,
let's tackle one by one if you want.
so I think there's a little bit of clarification that we just, and you have it in your question
Yeah.
down here around, does repair repaving require a permit?
Right, that was the question that you brought up last time, and it's not,
It's not,
when I read the current regulations, a repair or repaving currently does, within 30 feet of the right of way, currently does require a permit.
right, and so like this would be like even a resurfacing in our current regulations. that's how it
regulations, yeah, a
is.
repaving is whatever that means, whether that's putting pavement on top of
Oh.
pavement
That can mean either,
or paving the first time, perhaps.
okay,
Well, well, basically what it is it's affecting the apron
Right,
Right.
out onto a town road.
right.
And so that's why it would make sense to, if you're gonna repave or repair, the road agent should be, there should be a permit involved, the
Yeah.
road agent should be inspected.
Right.
We had
Because
one problem that with the select board, I think it was a 2 foot wide or 3 foot wide off the town part of the road.
Mhm.
And a guy complained that his car would bump on the town road. And so I went up and looked at it, and it was correct width to the town, and it didn't. Any part of that pavement was equal to the level of the town road. So he was worried about the gravel that came up to the thing, but the town does a little thing for a driveway. They widen the road right in front of the driveway. Did you know that?
Our road agent does?
Yeah,
Well, we have
the town does.
For years we have.
Yeah, I think it's about 3 feet wide. So he was concerned about it. He said it wasn't wide enough. But it was, I measured it.
Okay. So that was a owner asking a question or an owner complaining about
The owner was complaining.
that. I didn't catch what they were complaining about.
Well, you know, when you have a driveway here,
Yep,
and when the town paves this road across,
yep.
they usually put a little
oh, yeah.
thing that goes out here
Oh,
like this.
okay.
And it
Okay,
comes back in. So he said, well, that wasn't wide enough. It should have been wider.
Oh, okay.
So I went up and measured it. I figured it was 2 feet or 3 feet or 4 feet, but
Yeah, okay.
it was something the town does when they pave the roads.
Mhm. Yeah, I assume that's to protect the edge of the.
It's
pavement.
like an apron.
Yeah,
So just coming back to that comment, so then on page 7, we say that it's the owner of the property is responsible for maintaining the grade and the culverts or any other structures, but sorry, this is on page 7, is section 10A.
Mhm.
But I guess just for clarification, we're saying you're responsible for maintaining it, but you also need to get a permit. According to the first section that we just went through.
yes, and that's what we currently say. I remember a conversation from from the road agent. We were looking for this about a year ago or 2 years ago. What he gets concerned about when people maintain their driveway is, does the water flow, is there a change in the grade that affects water flowing onto the road where it's supposed to flow from the road into the driveway?
Mhm.
In other words, water's not supposed to come from a driveway into the road, and he was, so whenever there's pavement added, whenever there's maintenance done within the 30 feet of the right of way, he wants the ability to talk to the landowner and understand what they're doing and issue the permit.
Okay,
But yes, if there's a requirement to maintain it and there's a requirement to get a permit if you're doing maintenance. Now, what is not clear is what level of alteration or repair or repaving triggers that requirement? And I think that's a conversation with the road agent. From the, either the property owner, or we try to define it here.
So we need to talk to Kent. Speak with Kent about
Yeah, about what triggers it.
what, yep.
Should there be maybe some definitions in here for stuff like a little page of definitions?
That might help.
Repay would be a good one to have a definition of, is that just surfacing or is that,
Yeah,
having a
that's one
paving
way to do it.
company? And I also, I'm wondering where we're saying 30 feet relative to the highway, both ways they say that.
Mhm.
Relative to the right of way rather.
Mhm.
Very few people know where the right of way is.
Correct.
So that always is a problem, because some people have the perception that the edge of the pavement is the right of way, and some people recognize the stone wall, and some people don't recognize that it's a 4-rod road and it's
Right.
33 feet back. So I wonder if instead of the right of way, if we could just make it the edge of pavement. Is that the intent is? If it's a small 2-rod road, so 16 feet from center line. And the road is maybe 20-foot wide paved.
Actually 17 feet, isn't it?
What's that?
2 rods is 17 feet.
16 and a half.
Yeah, okay.
And so I just think that depending on the layout of the road.
Right.
You're gonna have a lot longer area plus 30 feet.
Correct.
And I didn't know if that's the intent. Is just 30 feet from the edge of the pavement is the idea, that's the intent behind it, is 30 feet from the road, the traveled way, or is it? Because it's gonna vary quite a bit. I think that it's gonna end up with having a lot of confusion for anybody that doesn't know where the right of way is.
Do you think 30 feet is excessive?
Well, if it's like, for instance, if it's a 4-rod road, but it's only paved 20 feet wide. That, you're almost up to, it's almost 50 feet at that point that you're taking care of yourself, or if it's a 2-rod road, it's 34, 35 feet. I think it would be easier for everybody if they just thought from the edge of pavement.
But we have driveways off dirt roads though.
True, edge of the traveled way, I guess.
That could be a good way to explain it. Edge of the traveled way. Yeah, I've heard that before.
How you can,
Yeah.
The trick is it would be the traveled way at the time of permit application, because that traveled way can change over time.
right, so
Now, the application is a one-time application. It says, hey, I'm gonna build something here. And then when you're done building it, there's no need to maintain. If the road moves 3 feet, you don't have to change something 3 feet inside your property. But the next time you pave it, you might be paving it, the 30 feet might be a different 30 feet. If the road has expanded, it's gone from dirt to
Right.
pavement, or the plow came along and all of a sudden, Hill Road is now 1.5 feet wider than it was 2 years ago.
yeah.
So how do we,
But you probably can't accommodate for. I mean, you're not coming back to your drive. Are you saying at that point you'd be coming back to your driveway like regulations to make sure that you're compliant with it?
No,
Or-
it's only triggered if you're doing.
Right, so then
If you're
it doesn't
putting
really
something
matter
brand
what
new,
happens
yeah.
after the fact.
No, this doesn't,
Yeah,
this is only. if you're
at the
changing.
time of,
Yeah. the time
Yeah.
of permitting. So it may be, that probably meets the intent is of traveled way versus right of way.
right,
I think the lawyer recommendations were right of way, because that's a defined line that is on a survey somewhere,
okay,
that you can go back and reference. The traveled way is you go out and look at it and say it's about here.
It's about there, yeah. It has
Yeah.
more fluff now. I'm
Yeah.
thinking more of the ease of the person thinking, where is my end?
Yeah,
Where's my
from a-
30 feet?
From a user point of view,
Yeah.
a property owner point of view,
Yeah.
it does make
But that-
more sense, yeah.
From
Okay.
like my professional. And nobody ever calls me to figure out where the right of way is so they can do their driveway.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. All right.
It's just a thought.
No, I think that's a good one. So to George, to your comment is 30 feet too much? There's an interesting discussion in the state driveway regulations, which apply to anybody on a state road, that talk about the slope from the road and changes in the slope. And what they do say is the slope for the first car length, which they define as 20 feet, shall be X. And the slope beyond that shall change no more than 10 degrees. So with the beyond it is kind of beyond 20 feet. So 30 feet to cover that change kind of makes sense to me. Having it less means you've got a slope that goes down and you've regulated to the first car length, and then the driveway could go nearly vertical and it would not, it would pass all rules and regulations.
If I remember correctly, because Brian was one of the authors to have the driveway regulations just be the first 30 feet.
Right.
He didn't just pull that number out of,
Yeah,
he did some homework on that.
I think so.
Yeah, so there, it did, and it does make sense.
Yeah.
You say that as well.
Now, we are unique in that we're pretty much the only town in the area that doesn't regulate the entire driveway.
That's good.
We're about the only town that only looks at the first 30 feet.
This says something for Temple.
Yes. All right, so,
Can I, sorry, can I just,
yep,
one more clarification and
Page, you know.
just on the page 3. So if I'm resurfacing my own driveway, which is probably not compliant because it's on a blind hill.
Right.
I don't, and I have to get a permit, so I get a permit. Do I have to meet the other criteria, or can I just, if I was paving it, can I pave it? Or do I have to meet all the other criteria in here?
Existing driveway should be.
It should be okay, right, grandfathered, right? So even though I'm just resurfacing it, an existing driveway, the curb cut is there,
Then you would have to
right?
join one that's already been there, established,
Yeah,
it should be grandfathered.
okay. It's just not very clear in here. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
But other than that,
right,
The only other thing, on that section. 3 on the permit.
Mhm.
Where we struck the word select board.
Yep.
I don't mind the taking the planning board out of that, it makes sense, but. Just having the road agent, I'm almost thinking it should say. Select board and or road
road
agent,
agent, okay,
just, well, because, I mean, you could, God forbid, we could be in a situation where we don't have a road agent.
Yep.
For a little bit of time, and then selectmen would be, somebody would have to be.
Hmm.
You wouldn't have to have somebody get held up on a permit if they didn't have something. They
And
don't be-
that aligns because the road agent, if I remember correctly, is appointed by the select board. So it's the
They are
their
now.
authority.
you could have a
Okay.
road agent that was prejudiced.
I just think it
Then
like,
you could have people on the select board too.
yeah, I'm just wondering if that select board should stay in there,
Okay.
yeah.
I think
Select
so
board
too.
should also appoint
a temporary.
code enforcement officer to fill that role until such time as we have. a
Yeah.
road agent.
Another reason to have select board still stay in there is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep, okay, that's a good catch. I like that. But I'll put that back in.
so Mary, the next part, that section 5.
Mhm.
Where it talks about the, design criteria, within 30 feet of the public right of way.
Mhm.
And then in blue, it says unless otherwise noted. Is that referring to right below after C? Everything in blue?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that there was a link down to. There's some interesting verbiage that's come in from the state recently that we'll talk about.
so the big thing for me on this is looking at this is it all, it's fine, except I want to make sure I understand. The note that says RSA 153.5, paragraph 6. it says, states, the local land use board's authority shall not be superseded by the state fire code.
Correct.
So I interpret that as Temple, our town has the authority. The state doesn't have the authority.
Correct,
We,
that-
yeah, okay.
As long as it's keep reading, as long as it's a detached 1 or 2 family home.
Right, not a commercial
Yep.
or, yeah, gotcha.
And-
So some rules attached to it, okay. Yeah.
And if the driveway is greater than 150 feet long, it's at least 12 feet wide. If someone chooses to make it narrower than that, which would also violate other rules, then the
Mhm.
state fire code applies. But if, as
Yep.
long as it's greater than 12 feet or
Yep.
something 150 feet greater, longer driveway,
Yep.
then this new RSA isolates the planning board, which is the local land use board, from the state fire code.
And that would be for that particular one driveway.
Right.
Yeah.
However-
So if somebody wanted to build a 10-foot wide driveway that was 151 feet long,
Right.
they would not abide by the first 30 feet. They would abide by all
The entire driveway
entire.
is subject to the state fire code, which
Mhm.
is not referenced here at all. So that's
Yeah.
still a gap in our understanding of what.
But if
the
you're
fire-
12 feet wide,
then
it's a
you're
mute
exempt,
point.
then you're exempt from it.
Yeah.
However, look at the next sentence. It does say the local land use board, us, shall, and this is in the RSA,
Mhm.
give due consideration to any recommendation, any written recommendation of the municipal fire chief to include vertical clearance, width, grade, suitability of road surface, bridges, dead ends, and the ability to pass and turn around once in the driveway. So
If it's way longer than 150 feet, it has to have.
So what this says is that requirement is waived as long as this board coordinates with the local fire chief on what that local fire chief wants to have as written recommendations. So what's there in blue for the next page is what the local fire chief and I worked on for a bit about a year ago. And needs to still get reviewed by him because he hasn't seen it for a year.
With George.
That's George, yeah.
Yep.
And
So,
it's,
give me a hypothetical.
Yep.
Where new, obviously this is applying to new.
Yep.
So give me a hypothetical where somebody applied for they bought a building lot, they're gonna build a house, they're applying for a building permit, they're applying for a driveway permit. On the building permit, give me a hypothetical where this would happen. Where this would be triggered.
so it's a 1 or 2 family home. It is greater than 150 feet in length. And they've built it to our standards above, which say, hey, we've got a 16-foot width that's in paragraph C above, of which 12 feet of that is, paved or gravelled or passable. So if they comply with that, then they're exempt from the state fire code rules of turnaround and other things. As long as they follow, as long as the land use board gives due consideration to what the fire chief would like to see. So it basically says the state fire board may not know the town of Temple as good as the local fire chief knows the town of Temple. So his recommendations can be guidance.
So if you had a driveway.
Yep.
And the first 30 feet met all the requirements.
Mhm.
And the driveway was 150 feet long.
Yep.
And it was 12 feet wide. And it was on a steep grade.
Mhm.
It's still exempt from this.
It's exempt from the
State
state fire codes.
The state
It would-
fire code,
It would
right.
still have to apply, you still have to abide by our rules. Now, if you look at our rules of steepness, they only apply for the first 30 feet of that driveway.
That's right.
Right.
So that would not,
Right.
that would not,
Now, if that landowner chose to comply with the first 30 feet and then go to an 8-foot wide driveway for the rest,
oh, I get it. It has to be
Then
all the whole way.
the state
Right.
fire codes come in and they're gonna say, hey, it's gonna be, I'm gonna guess, it's gonna be 12 feet wide, it's gonna have turnarounds, it's gonna have a whole bunch of things. So they're getting I get a jail free card is make it 12 feet wide. And then comply with the guidance that's proposed.
Yeah, so it sounds like, exactly.
Yeah.
12 feet, if you build your driveway 12 feet wide, you comply with everything for the first 30 feet.
Yep.
Then this does not apply, this RSA does not apply.
This RSA exempts that driveway from the state fire codes.
On the state park.
Yeah.
So the state fire code is in a lot more. Detailed, I guess. It has
Yes.
more information that
Yeah.
you have to,
Yeah.
okay.
More commercial.
Yeah, and if it's a commercial building or it's a 3-family thing, yeah, then the state fire, this does not provide an exemption. So what I think happens is if you get into like a 3-person or a commercial building, most of this is moot because it's superseded by the fire code, the state fire code anyway, of width and whatever else they have in there. I need to look it up. I haven't looked it up yet.
Yeah, I read it all today again, and it was interesting, like the 40-foot long fire engine weighing 15 tons.
Yeah.
Which is no big deal because a concrete truck, when it comes into pouring foundation, weighs
Right.
40 tons.
Right.
So
I like it.
and so I was thinking about this, talk about the bridges in there too.
Yeah.
If you can get a 40-ton concrete truck across your bridge, then you're gonna be able to get the 15-ton fire truck. So,
Right.
So it's a lot of it's kind of.
And I agree
It seems like
for
it's, you know.
yeah, for modern construction, yes, it's kind of gonna happen by happenstance. If I create my permanent house log cabin out in the woods, building it myself. And I've built this 8-foot or 6-foot wide bridge that I can get my small cart across. We don't have any regulation that prevents that.
Gotcha.
And that means there's no truck getting up that driveway to that property.
How does your driveway connect with the town road?
How does my driveway
Yeah.
connect to town road? They meet at almost a 90-degree
Do you
angle.
have any water that goes out on the road?
It does, it currently does, yes.
I feel sorry for you.
Yep. But you know the
I
history,
know
you know the history on that road?
his grandfather.
Do you know the history? The house was there before the road. The town put the road in a very inconvenient spot
Oh,
for
is
that
that right?
driveway, yes.
Yeah.
The road was on the other side of the house.
Yeah. That was a Drury house, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Like my house is a Drury house, yeah.
So yes, that one, yeah, I've talked to Kent about it, so that, like a lot of the ones currently in town, they're non-compliant to today's standard.
There's a lot of road driveways in town that wouldn't be consistent with
Right.
this.
Yeah, so this, I mean, this predominantly affects new construction. Right. And I wanted to find what kind of repair or repaving triggers this, is it purely? And if someone wants to take a dirt driveway that's not compliant and pave it, what needs to apply would make sense. If you're repairing it and it's purely, I'm adding a load of gravel because some of it got plowed away by snow removal, is that considered a repair that triggers this? And I think most people would say no, and it'd just be good to get that written down. What triggers that? If it's make it 3 times as wide as it was before and change the angle and as it meets the road, and that probably would trigger it in Kent's mind.
Well, in the olden days too, it used to be you need a culvert.
Yeah.
So they put this little bitty thing in there.
Yeah.
It's not a-
It's fast.
Right.
So when you go back and you get this little bitty thing, well, that's.
Well, now you got to repair, because it's collapsed in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a lot.
So there's a section in here, I'm trying to find it. Okay, here we are, page 5. Bottom of the page, J.
Mhm.
So. Talking about the driveway not being constructed closer, it used to be 10 feet.
Yep.
Yeah,
And-
I questioned that too.
And so to make it 25 feet from. So my question would, I guess, my concern would be on that, is that there's gonna be times where the way a lot is constructed with wetlands and different things, it's not gonna be possible for anybody to be able to do anything but get closer to the property line.
Mhm.
So I'm wondering if we should have a mechanism there for the person to be able to have a waiver,
I think it should.
Yeah, so-
Should remain 10 feet.
okay.
So waivers.
Or a waiver or something so that it's not etched in stone.
The next page, right?
Yeah, so next page, there's a section on waivers
Mhm.
in the middle of the page. You know, waivers or modifications to these regulations may be made by the planning board or their appointed agent upon request in writing. You know, in the situations where the spirit and intent of the regulations are not, violated. I'm not sure the planning board that's the recommendation from Southwest
Can-
Regional.
Does that make sense? I mean, we don't get the permits, right, for the driveways?
I'm sorry?
We don't see the permits, right?
No. road
No,
agencies.
so why, but it seems odd that we'd be,
Well,
how does that process work?
So,
The application goes to the
They
select.
put them
board?
on the subdivision plan, for instance.
yeah,
but they oftentimes
just
we
like
get
a-
plans that don't have the driveway location on the
Yeah.
plans.
I think the only one we did last year had driveways on it.
Yeah.
They all had them?
isn't
Yeah.
it required for a major?
I think so.
Yeah.
You typically do when you do your plans?
Not on minor, but on major, definitely.
Yeah.
And some towns require them anyways. Francis Town, doesn't matter if it's a 2-lot subdivision.
So you see my point about, because you've done enough of these where there could be plenty of opportunities where 25 feet would be just too. You might need every foot you can
Yeah,
get.
because you might have steep,
Yeah.
steep, then the one nice place is like
Yeah.
12 feet.
Yeah.
Yep.
from the-
I mean, that was a recommendation from the legal review, because we don't have to accept it.
That's right.
Mhm.
Temple.
Okay. So I guess
There's-
we'll just put a question mark there. We
Yeah.
There was something about being bonding.
Yeah.
What page is that on?
yeah, that's
7,
It's what, 7?
yep,
6,
or,
page 6.
Page 6.
Section
you're right.
6.
Yeah. You're right, it's both pages, that's interesting.
Oh, yeah, you do. Oh, you do. You're right. Section 9 on page 7 is also referring to
Yeah.
bonds. Yeah. Which one are you referring to, George?
Well, there was one that I didn't think that was necessary.
You might be,
No,
do we need both?
That one?
Try-
Or was it the money that the $1,500 being striked out on the next page?
Okay, so the one in section 6 on page 6 refers to essentially new construction where a driveway permit requires the driveway to be paved, to have a paved apron. Doesn't have to be a whole driveway, but the paved apron. And the paved apron is not satisfactorily completed at the time of certificate of occupancy. So which is sort of the last point when the select board can say, hey, you're done. And the pavement may not have been completed because maybe it's wintertime. It says, the current rules say, the applicant shall post a security bond or security with the select board in the amount of $2,000. In whatever form the select board finds acceptable. What the legal review then added is the security shall be held until the paving of the apron is satisfactorily inspected by the road agent, at which point the security will be refunded to the applicant. And it continued on, if the apron is not paved within 1 year of the issuance of the driveway permit, the town of Temple may utilize the security to pave the apron. So it's basically ensuring that if a building permit was issued and a driveway permit was issued that said you shall protect the town's road with an apron, but you never get to it, the town's gonna do it for you
With your money.
with your,
Right.
Well, I would tend to check that.
Mhm.
on an average apron, 12 foot wide, 12 by 3.
Yeah,
And make sure that we can do it for.
That's a- that's a good question.
That's an old number.
Because when this was, when that was approved several years ago, pavement was a bit cheaper.
Yeah.
Southwest did recommend some different language. Security, proper construction. So in the case of security for proper construction of culverts, piping, or ditching, incidental to but necessary for the proper discharge of water, the wording that was in there was shall be required to provide a bond of a minimum of $1,500. Or an amount necessary for security, and they recommended getting the dollars out of there, just say an amount necessary for the security of the work, which essentially I would assume the select board would go to the road agent and say, hey, they're supposed to put a culvert in. If they don't do it, how much is it gonna cost the town? And you'd set that amount.
We probably should do the same thing with paving.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I will,
Be whatever the current.
Yep.
market Rate is.
I can agree with that, but I also am concerned about people that can't afford that kind of money, as long as they're compliant with with what's going on. $2,000 is a lot of money for somebody that's trying to build a $200,000 house.
well, what you've got is the road agent has issued a driveway permit. And
When you
it's-
do bond, it, you
and
don't
this-
have to put up the 2,000.
Mhm.
It's like $200 to get a $2,000.
Right.
Yeah.
So you gotta put up 10% of it, usually is how it works.
Yes, right,
And then you have the insurance covers the,
right.
Yeah,
if you fail to comply. So there are ways around it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that if somebody was in that kind of case and had that kind of budget, and they were trying to work with it, I'm sure that if they came and asked you guys or the select board or whoever they have to, we could do something else, because one way or another, we would get that.
Yeah.
If we had to do it, we would get it, whether we would add it to their taxes or whatever, however you go about doing it, we could do it somehow.
okay, so if we
And,
take.
and has this been, I mean, it doesn't sound like this happens very often, right?
No, we
Like,
don't generally ask anybody to bond anything.
right,
Yeah,
yeah,
It's. We're kind of at a point now where we really should be doing that.
Okay.
because Then we have a guarantee that it's gonna be done.
Yeah.
yeah,
you don't have to go chase them later.
Yeah,
Right.
and because the lawyers and all the other stuff that goes with it's gonna cost us way more than $2,000 just to dig a culvert, maybe,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
So if we pull the language that's instead of $2,000, if it says an amount necessary for security for the proper construction of an apron, the road agent gives you a number. And it also says the security shall be in a form acceptable to the select board. Now, is that cash or a check,
Whatever.
Whatever.
bond,
Yeah.
whatever the select board decides is acceptable essentially? So it gives you the opportunity to work with that applicant. If it's a, out-of-state construction company putting 10 aprons in and they never get to it, well, you're gonna want their 20 to 50 grand.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're gonna want that. Otherwise, you're gonna go chase them.
Well, I mean, you can't change them, they disappear and they change companies and they're gone.
Right.
Well, that's all I had when I reviewed it.
Okay.
Carter, do you have anything else when you reviewed it?
no. Well, I guess, at the very end, are these just comments?
So at the very end, if you look at the other document and look at the applications that are in the back, they didn't fast forward to this. But if you go to the driveway application, which looks like, well, looks like this and the end of the other document that I sent out. If you look at page 2, under regulations, there's a question on the application. Can the driveway accommodate a heavy duty or commercial trucks? Yes or no?
You're talking, okay, this is actually page 9 of the old
Or
document.
the old document.
Yeah, or current document.
And my question is, it's an interesting question because there's no requirement in the driveway regulations to accommodate a heavy duty or commercial truck. So we're asking a question for something that's not required. What I suggested is, should this reference, a fire apparatus in reference to that new RSA, since we have to validate that the fire chief's recommendations are involved. This question could be, driveway can accommodate a fire apparatus of certain size, yes or no? It doesn't appear to be regulatory because that, well, if it isn't regulatory, at least what it does is it documents on the application in the file of that house that this driveway was not built to accommodate a emergency vehicle. And future purchasers of that property could look in the records should they do their due diligence and realize, oh, my driveway is not going to accommodate a fire truck.
Yeah.
That's all it does, I think.
Yeah,
If it becomes regulatory, then it becomes did it comply with the fire chief's
Like
regulations?
Bruce says,
Well, I mean,
concrete trucks.
concrete truck
Have
weights,
to have the access.
lumber trucks and triaxle dump trucks are 24-ton.
Yeah.
Lumber trucks are about the same at 40-ton for a car. Yeah, so it's,
Yeah. And
it's obviously, we know they weigh double.
Right.
Well, the fire.
it's
truck.
essentially the same answer,
it's
right?
essentially it
But,
is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
but I agree, like, we shouldn't. If
I would
we're
just-
not gonna put it in our regulations,
just-
then we shouldn't ask that question.
That was my,
Yeah.
Take that question right
Yeah,
yeah,
Yeah.
or change it. I don't mind how you
right.
reworded it
Okay.
either.
The second one is inconsistent with the current regulations. So this asks site distance is at least 10 times the rate of the speed limit for the road for which the driveway enters is measured at a measured height of 3 foot, yes or no? And that's the old way we used to define it. The new way we used to define it is at the top of page 6, which is site distance is, if the speed limit on the road is 30 miles an hour, the site distance is 200 feet. If it's 40 miles an hour, it's 300 feet. If it's 50 miles an hour more, it's 400 feet. So my suggestion is take that table or reference it and use the same calculation because this calculation is different.
Yeah, no, that's outdated.
Yep,
Yeah.
that makes sense. That makes sense.
I think in the subdivision regulations, we also had something about this.
Yeah, it's this table.
It's that table
Yeah.
and it's also the height, 3 feet 9 inches versus,
You are correct. Yeah.
this is only 3 feet. 3
Yes.
feet 9 inches is the state, I think we should match the state in that case. So everyone's getting the same driveway site distance calculation.
All right. So would we be better off just using this?
Yeah. I would just use this.
Yep.
And then maybe a definition of what site distance, how to calculate site distance. Or the site
Okay.
distance is calculated in the, because 300 feet from your standpoint, standing up straight is different from 3 feet 9 inches.
Okay,
You know what I mean? You
You're
can
right.
see a lot farther. 'cause
you're right.
higher.
Okay. So really, this site distance table here should be measured at 3 feet 9 inches above the road driveway
And
surface.
the reason they pick
Yeah.
3 feet 9 inches is because when you're sitting in an average
That's,
car,
yeah.
your
That's-
eyeballs are at about 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Looking at about 3 feet,
Yeah.
about 4 feet up the road.
And I believe that the state makes you sit 10 feet back from the edge of pavement. 3 feet 9 inches, and you have to look down and be able to see something. It's also at 3 feet 9 inches. So that the oncoming car could see you, you could see them, that kind of thing. And they don't tell you where the oncoming, I always go center line roads. I figure that's where the driver's gonna be closest to.
So it's really, there's a question of what distance back from the edge, probably the edge of the traveled way kind of thing.
Yes.
I've read that in that subdivision. It's not sitting here. It's,
Yeah, it's, well, if you look at page 13,
3'6".
Yeah.
It's old.
Yes,
chart.
it is an old chart.
But it give you the
Yeah.
idea.
Oh, but they're showing you the same thing though.
They're showing
with the
this
graph.
distance.
Yeah.
Right here.
See that, Carter? Page 13 of the existing.
Yeah,
So they got
okay.
some distance here that's not marked. From the edge of the traveled way to the driver. Or is that distance to that? And it's not actually. Yeah, so there is a defined distance here.
Yeah.
10 feet might be about right. You can look in the state.
Yeah,
regs and verify.
Yeah, that's about right, probably because look at the car.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's, this shows up in both our permanent and temporary applications. It's the same verbiage.
Are you, Murray, are you planning to look at what Jeff had in his recommendations? Should we, there's not that many. We could kind of read through it quickly.
Yeah. Starts on page 15, right?
Yep.
Bottom of page 15.
Bottom of page 15. So Jeff's comments in his review of the 2022 driveway regulations said there are strengths in the fact that landowners are responsible for maintaining drainage and runoff for the entirety of the construction project. So when when the driveway is under construction, the road agent can request more information for areas of wetland coverage, ledge removal, steep slopes, and underground drainage. And there's limits on the permitting and project timelines, which reduces the likelihood of these monitoring points like. Yeah. So he saw it as a strength. The one weakness he highlighted was the driveway regulations provide little or no incentive for LID practices, which is
Low impact development.
low impact development, which he clarified as predominantly stormwater runoff control.
Right.
Right.
And I think he's correct. I don't see any in here that say you can't put your you're not supposed to drain into the road, but we don't say you should drain into a swale that then sinks down versus running off your property.
Right.
Whatever
No
those,
treatment or anything.
whatever those others are. And then he had recommendations of incentivize more sustainable materials in driveway construction, such as permeable materials, gravel, or hard pack. And promote low impact development with swales or rain gardens to compensate for the increase in impervious surface.
That's one of the questions. This is the same thing I had the question with the rest of the conversation we had with Jeff is
Yeah.
how do you, like what?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
what
What do
would
we
the
do?
incentives be, you know,
Yeah.
Right.
or just, there's nothing hard there to say, okay,
Right.
well, yeah, we do that.
Yeah.
We do what?
I know, I had that written down and I must have missed it when we were talking to
Yeah.
him, but,
Yeah, nothing jumps out at me.
Right, I mean, my only experience with something similar to that where where things like that are required is if you're building in a wetland district near wetlands and in a very dense development where you've got call it a 10,000 square foot lot, quarter-acre lot, and you're putting 5,000 feet of impervious surface on it of roofing and driveway and such. You have to control all that runoff on your property. You have to absorb into the ground and not run off somewhere else. Whatever those ratios are, there's a calculation if you're in the wet.
Big difference between that and a 3-acre lot.
Right.
but should we have something in here about how, I think you just said, should it run off into a swale and whatnot? Is that something that is worth pursuing? Or is it in other towns' driveway regulations?
I haven't seen it, but I haven't looked for it.
Yeah.
His comment just came up recently.
Yeah, just curious.
I would think for like, if you were talking about a subdivision, like
Yeah.
a major development, 10 lots, 20 lots.
Yeah.
You got a new road, then yeah, rain gardens, all that kind of the LID stuff, but if one person wants to get a driveway, make it
Okay.
a rain garden, it's kind of silly.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
All right, any other discussion? All right, so what I will do. Comments we talked about, you know, the major ones were changed right of way to traveled way. Try to understand what triggers a repair. Why does it, when does a repair qualify as a driveway permit? Or require a driveway permit? Leave the select board in as an authorizing agent. Got that. I owe the fire chief an update to, you know, give him another chance to look at this stuff and see if it still makes sense. These are the sections that it's, and you know, for the audience, the sort of the fire chief driven thoughts is, hey, if your driveway is longer than 800 feet and it's narrow, about every 750 feet, you ought to provide a pull off where a fire truck can sit and connect the last 750 feet of hose to the next 750 feet of hose and pump it in a way that doesn't block fire truck number 3 trying to get up to fight the fire. But there's a pull off where it's not going to sink and tip over into the ground and stuff like that. That's kind of the design guidance. And we can look at whether those should be shalls as required by the fire chief, or they should be recommendations for the road agent and the select board to consider as part of the driveway permitting process.
As like a possible exception to the 30-foot.
Right. Yeah, because the minute you trigger, okay, I've now got a long driveway, it kind of triggers either if you didn't comply, it triggers the state fire marshal or whatever the fire chief wants to put in here as prudent recommendations. I will try to add those in without mucking up with the formatting of this document and have it ready for the next meeting.
Just a thing to note about the state fire marshal, they're always gonna go to the town first.
Yep.
Before they get involved, in say, see your chief and
Yep.
town. Before it goes.
Right. Which kind of, if that's what they really do, then this new RSA may or may not really add a lot of value. It does have this, you know, the planning board shall consult with the fire chief, the local fire chief, as part of the process.
If we have any questions, we can always go to the state level.
Right.
Get an answer. No.
Right.
But if you just call the state level, they're gonna say.
Start here. Yeah.
start here.
I'll also take a
Who
look.
prints these up? Who prints these up? These new regulations?
Who prints them?
Yeah. Do you just do all that typing and stuff?
Oh, yeah, I was trying to format it
You need to make some spaces in
to spaces in between
between words.
between words.
I think it depended on how you printed it, George, because I had that problem too, and then it might just be the way that Word is converting,
Yeah.
like it printed funny for me at one point where there weren't spaces between
Huh.
words. So maybe whatever. Did you send, I don't know if you sent a PDF
You
or
want
something.
my copy?
Yeah, let me see, what does your copy look like?
Well, I marked them up
Oh, okay.
where they were.
Oops. Oh, I see, yes, what happened, oh, thank you, George, because I've been trying to catch those.
That's what he means, okay.
What happened is somebody took the PDF off of the town website, converted it to Word,
Mm.
and where words moved around from the edge of the document, they
Yeah.
didn't add a space in. So all those have to be put in manually.
You want to keep that?
Yeah, thank you. If you don't need those notes in here.
Yeah.
Okay,
And I might have missed a couple.
they're easy to miss, when I look at that same page on my copy. Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, I missed them. Now it's like here.
Oh, yeah.
So if everybody wants to email Kathy. If you have anything for the agenda for the next meeting. I think we probably just keep, for the most part, keep the agenda the way it is. The ongoing topics, but we can fine tune it. And the only other thing we have is Christine had put on here was the training, March 21st. And then on May 11th, the Spring Planning Zoning Conference, if anybody's interested. Those are on the bottom of the agenda. Okay. Well,
Session is on Zoom, so there's no cost involved at all, I'm not driving anywhere. But it said I needed to log in to register. What am I logging in? Do you know?
Most of the time, you'll have to go to the website, whoever's hosting it,
Right.
they'll have a class, and then you just have to sign up for it, that you're gonna be taking by Zoom or whatever.
But it said it like sent me to a username prompt to be able to register.
What website was it, Kathy? It was a,
I can, Christine forwarded it. I can find out, and maybe it's a town. I don't know.
I think Christine would be the best
Yeah.
person to ask. I don't think that there's like a login specific to our planning board that I'm aware of, right?
Anybody else have anything?
No, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second,
Carter, how do you vote?
Yes.
George? Yes.
yes.
Yes. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
We can pull this stuff away.
No,
think
they
we
just
stay
put
up.
tables up against.
Push them up against.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, she said that, it's sort of, she said.
Chairs go away?
They had some.
Yeah. Nice to meet you. Yeah.